In a quiet village nestled deep within the hills, Adaze, a beautiful young woman, was known for her stubbornness and pride. Her beauty had earned her the admiration of many men, but it was her insatiable desire for wealth that made her a legend in the village. Adaze, the daughter of a humble farmer, was unlike any other woman in the community. While the other young women dreamed of love and marriage, Adaze dreamed only of riches of diamonds, silks, and grand palaces. Her heart was set on nothing less than a life of luxury. And no man, no matter how kind or handsome, could offer her the life she desired. Despite her parents' pleas, Adaze rejected every suitor who came to ask for her hand in marriage. They were all too poor, too simple, too insignificant to catch her interest. "I will marry only a man richer than all the men in this village," she would declare, her voice full of pride. "He must be wealthier than anyone I have ever seen, with riches that no one can match. Only then will I be satisfied." Her demands seemed endless. The village elders would shake their heads in concern, but Adaze paid them no mind. Her refusal to settle was unshakable. In her heart, she believed that her beauty and pride deserved more than the ordinary life her parents could offer. She wanted wealth beyond measure, and she would stop at nothing to find it. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, and the sky turned a fiery orange, Adaze sat by the riverbank, lost in thought. The sound of the rushing water soothed her, and for a moment she allowed herself to dream of the life she wanted, of gold jewelry adorning her neck, of luxurious fabrics draped across her body, and of a mansion with walls made of precious stone. She spoke aloud, unaware that an otherworldly presence was nearby. "I will marry only a man richer than all the men in this village," she muttered to herself. "He must be wealthier than any of them. Only then will I be satisfied." Little did Adaze know, her words carried far beyond the river. A spirit, passing through the forest on its way to another realm, overheard her declaration. This spirit was unlike any Adaze had ever imagined. He was not bound by a human form, for he had no true body. He existed in the spirit world, where he could shapeshift and assume any form he wished. But hearing Adaze's words ignited a powerful desire within him, a desire to win her over, to give her the wealth she so craved, and to teach her a lesson about the dangers of vanity. The spirit, moved by Adaze's selfishness, decided to make her an offer she could not refuse. But to do so, he would need to borrow a human body, for the spirit world had no place for those who sought to live among humans. He would need a vessel, a form that could seduce her, that could make her fall in love with him, so that he could grant her the wealth she sought, and perhaps, just perhaps, show her the cost of greed. He embarked on a journey to gather the parts of a human body. His quest led him deep into the spirit world, where he visited other spirits who possessed the parts he needed. The first spirit he encountered gave him a leg. The second spirit provided the other leg. Another spirit offered him 2 eyes, while a fourth spirit gifted him 1 hand. One by one, the spirits offered him their pieces, until he had assembled the full set: 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, a torso, and a head, all made of borrowed pieces from different spirits. As the spirit gathered each part, he felt a strange sense of power coursing through him. The body he was creating was not human, but it would be convincing enough to fool Adaze. When he had gathered all that he needed, he forged a new form from the spirit world's magic, binding the parts together into a body that was both magnificent and unnerving. His new form was tall, with broad shoulders and a muscular build. His skin was flawless, and his face, though made of borrowed parts, had an eerie, almost unnatural beauty. His eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and his lips curled into a smile that carried a hint of mystery. Clad in robes of gold and silver, with jewels gleaming on his fingers and around his neck, the spirit set out for the human world. His heart raced with anticipation, for he knew that Adeze would be drawn to him. And when she saw him, when she beheld his wealth, she would have no choice but to accept his offer. When he arrived at Adeze's home, the village was in a state of hushed excitement. Word had spread that a stranger had come, and rumors of his wealth preceded him. Adeze, always eager to meet a man of fortune, was waiting by her window, her heart pounding with hope. As the spirit approached her house, Adeze's breath caught in her throat. He stood before her, a vision of opulence and power. His robes sparkled in the sunlight, and his horses, with their glossy coats and intricate harnesses, pawed the ground with grace. The spirit's presence seemed to fill the air with a heavy, magnetic pull. Adeze's eyes widened in awe as she took in the sight of him. "You are truly a man of wealth," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I have never seen anyone like you before. I accept your proposal for marriage." The spirit, now in human form, smiled knowingly. He had her exactly where he wanted her. Adeze, blinded by her greed and desire for wealth, saw only what she wanted to see. A man of unimaginable fortune. She had no inkling of the truth, that this was no ordinary man, but a spirit who had borrowed his body from the very essence of the spirit world. Despite the warnings of her elders, who had long suspected something was amiss, Adeze ignored their concerns. "This is my fate," she declared to them. "I will marry a man wealthier than anyone in this village, and nothing will stand in my way." The wedding ceremony was a grand affair, with villagers gossiping and whispering about Adeze's unusual choice. But Adeze was too caught up in the fantasy of her future to care. Her thoughts were consumed by the riches that awaited her, and she dismissed any doubts that may have lingered in her mind. After the vows were exchanged, Adeze and the spirit embarked on their journey to his village, where she would begin her new life. The path they traveled led through thick forests and across turbulent rivers. The deeper they went into the wilderness, the more unsettling the journey became. The trees grew taller and darker, and the air thickened with an eerie stillness. Adeze, though uneasy, was too blinded by the grandeur of her new life to voice her discomfort. She marveled at the wealth that surrounded her, the jewels, the fine silk fabrics, and the golden trinkets. But as the journey continued, strange things began to happen. At first she didn't notice, but then, as they passed through a dense part of the forest, she saw something that made her heart race with fear. The spirit's first leg, the one that had seemed so strong and powerful, began to fade away, disappearing into thin air. Adeze blinked in confusion, unsure if she had seen what she thought she had. The second leg vanished next, leaving only the faintest trace of its presence. The spirit's body seemed to be unraveling before her eyes. The fear that had begun to stir in her heart grew stronger as more parts of the spirit's body began to disappear. His hands, once so firm and powerful, vanished into the ether, leaving only empty air. Adeze's excitement faltered as she began to realize that something was terribly wrong. She had heard whispers of spirits before, but she had never imagined that she would be entangled with one. She had wanted wealth, but this was something far beyond her understanding. The journey had only just begun, and the deeper they ventured into the unknown, the more Adeze would come to understand the terrifying price of her greed. As Adeze and the spirit traveled farther from the village, crossing 7 rivers and passing through dark forests, she remained blind to the truth. Each day seemed to bring them closer to the grand life she had always imagined. The spirit, once clothed in wealth and grandeur, continued to deceive her, showering her with riches and promises of a life filled with luxury. Adeze reveled in the opulence that surrounded her, the golden robes, the jewels, the precious metals. But as they moved deeper into the unknown, a subtle change began to stir within her. In the beginning, Adeze had been captivated by the wealth and allure of her new life. The spirit had appeared to her as the perfect man, strong, handsome, and filled with a mystique that captivated her every thought. She had chosen him, knowing little of the strange circumstances that had brought him to her. As they journeyed on, however, a creeping sense of unease began to cloud her excitement. It started with the legs, those magnificent, powerful legs that had carried the spirit across the landscape with ease. One day, as they trekked through a thick, fog-covered forest, the first leg disappeared, fading from view as though it had never existed. Adeze, distracted by the wonders of their journey, thought little of it at first. Perhaps it was just an illusion, a trick of the eye. She dismissed it as an oddity in their long, mysterious journey. But the second leg soon followed. It faded in the same eerie way, vanishing without a trace. Adeze, still lost in the allure of the spirit's wealth and the dream of her future, felt a brief pang of confusion. She could have sworn that the spirit's legs had been sturdy and strong, but now there was nothing but empty air where they had been. She turned to him, ready to dismiss her thoughts, but he seemed unaffected, walking forward with the same grandiose stride. For days, Adeze ignored the strange occurrences, convincing herself that there was a reasonable explanation for everything. Perhaps the spirit's wealth and his power over the elements was so great that even the laws of nature were at his mercy. But as they traveled further from the village, the unsettling occurrences began to multiply. The spirit's body, once so flawless and strong, began to change. His hands, which had seemed so firm and capable, began to fade as well. One by one, the borrowed parts, the legs, the hands, the eyes all began to disappear, leaving only a skeletal form that had once been hidden beneath the borrowed flesh. It was as if the body was slowly unraveling, piece by piece, as though the spirit had been unable to keep the promise he had made to Adeze. One evening, as they camped by a river, Adeze noticed the first of the spirit's hands begin to fade. She watched, her heart racing, as the once strong hand, wrapped in gold rings, dissolved into thin air. She blinked, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks on her. She looked again, and the hand was gone. Adeze's heart thudded in her chest, her pulse quickening as an icy chill spread through her. "What's happening?" she whispered to herself. This isn't right." The spirit who had been walking ahead halted at her words. He turned to face her, and Adeze froze in terror. What she saw in front of her was no longer the wealthy, handsome man she had married, but something far more terrifying. The spirit's smile, which had once been charming and seductive, now twisted into something cold and sinister. His eyes, once full of mystery and allure, were now hollow, empty sockets that seemed to peer into her very soul. His body, once so muscular and powerful, was now nothing more than a collection of bones, barely held together by the remnants of his borrowed flesh. "You sought wealth above all else." The spirit's voice echoed through the night. It was no longer a smooth, melodic sound, but a deep, hollow rasp that sent a shiver down Adeze's spine. "Now you will learn the price of your greed." Adeze took a step back, her eyes widening in horror. She wanted to scream, to turn and run, but her legs felt weak, as though they could no longer carry her. Her body trembled with fear, but she couldn't look away from the terrifying figure before her. The truth was becoming painfully clear. The man she had married was not a man at all, but a spirit, a deceiver who had borrowed his body from the spirit world to seduce her with promises of wealth. What are you?" Adeze stammered, her voice trembling. "I am what you have chosen," the spirit replied, his voice now a mocking whisper. "I am your choice, Adeze. You wanted wealth, and now you have it. But like all things built on greed, it is fleeting. You sought a man richer than any other, but you never asked for love, for honesty, for anything but the gold. And now, you see the consequences." Adeze stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to cry out, to run away from the nightmare that had become her life. But there was no escape. The forest, dark and silent, seemed to close in around her, trapping her in its grasp. The spirit's body continued to crumble, the borrowed limbs disappearing one by one. First the legs, then the hands, and finally, the eyes. All that remained was a skeletal figure, a hollow, empty form that stood before her, its skull grinning in the moonlight. Adisi's breath caught in her throat as she realized the full extent of her mistake. The man she had married had never existed. He was nothing more than a tricker spirit that had used her vanity and greed to lure her into his world. "Help me," Adise screamed, her voice breaking with terror. She reached out, her hands trembling as she tried to grasp something, anything to hold on to. But there was nothing, no warmth, no comfort, only the cold, empty night. The spirit's laughter echoed through the forest, a haunting sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was a cruel, mocking sound, one that Adise would never forget. "You wanted a man richer than all the others in your village," the spirit whispered. "Now you have your wish." Tears filled Adise's eyes as she fell to her knees, the weight of her greed crashing down upon her. Her heart, once full of dreams of wealth, now felt empty and hollow. She had been given everything she wanted, and yet it had led her to nothing but despair. She had traded love, trust, and honesty for riches, and in doing so, she had lost everything. Her legs gave way beneath her, and she collapsed to the ground, unable to stand. The world around her seemed to spin as her vision blurred. "No," she whispered through her tears. "Please, no. I didn't know. I didn't understand." The spirit, now nothing more than a skeleton, stood over her, his empty eye sockets locked on her. "You sought wealth," he repeated, his voice hollow. "But wealth is not everything. It cannot save you from the darkness that follows in its wake." With a final, mocking laugh, the spirit vanished into the darkness, leaving Adise alone in the forest. She lay there, trembling, as the weight of her choices pressed down on her. The dreams of wealth that had once seemed so alluring now felt like a heavy burden, one that she could never escape. The next thing Adise knew, everything went black. Back in the village, the elders gathered to speak of Adise's tragic end. They had watched as she rejected the suitors who were kind, humble, and loving. They had seen her turn away from the men who had offered her everything, simply because they lacked wealth. But they had also seen the signs, warnings of the dangers of greed, of the consequences of chasing after riches without considering the cost. As news of Adise's disappearance spread, the villagers gathered to mourn her loss. But there was no sympathy in their eyes. Instead, there was a deep sense of sorrow, for Adise had been their own, and they had seen her choose a path that led to her destruction. The elders spoke in hushed tones, warning the younger generations of the dangers of greed and vanity. "Greed blinds the heart," one elder said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "And those who seek only wealth will often find themselves empty and lost." The story of Adise's ambitions spread far beyond the village. It became a cautionary tale, a warning to those who might be tempted to follow in her footsteps. And though Adise's name lived on, it was not remembered with admiration or respect. Instead, it was a reminder that the pursuit of riches, without considering the consequences, can lead to destruction. Thank you for watching. Please do well to subscribe for more interesting African folktale stories. Your support helps us bring more captivating tales to life, filled with rich traditions, valuable lessons, and exciting adventures from across the African continent. Stay tuned for more, and remember to hit the notification bell so you never miss a story.